Hi, I'm George Gerbo, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Washington Times Weekly, where we get the chance to sit down with our reporters and talk about their latest coverage of the news and events. Joining me this week is congressional correspondent Lindsay McPherson. Lindsay, it's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start off with what's going on in the Senate, specifically surrounding the release of files connected to the Jeffrey Epstein case. It's been a big issue on Capitol Hill. It essentially forced the House to leave early.
They're running out of town because it's clear the Speaker believes that their membership in the Republican caucus over there is so fragile that they cannot withstand simple debate, discussion about the topic of Jeffrey Epstein. They can't stand to have debate and discussion about it, so they're canceling their plans and running out for a summer recess.
And now on the Senate, it appears Democrats want to use a little-known and quasi-arcane law to force the release of those files.
Right, so there's this oversight law. It's called the Rule of Five that allows any 5 members of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, which is the main oversight committee in the Senate, to request documents or records from an executive branch agency. And basically those agencies are forced to hand them over under the law. Whether that happens in reality remains to be seen with Epstein files and other cases as well. There have been efforts to use this law that have been rebuffed by administrations, but it is a law, so it can go to court and it can be litigated. And so Democrats are pretty insistent that if the Justice Department does not comply with their use of this law, that they will litigate it in court and try to force release of the documents.
We'll stay on the Senate side, and a big issue that kind of comes up in multiple administrations, especially when you have control of the chamber all for one party, like Republicans do for both the House and the Senate, but specifically in the Senate, nominations. There's over 150 nominees that the Trump administration, President Trump, have put forth that still need to be confirmed. And that's something, Lindsay, that we'll see happen over the course of presidential administrations, where the party in the minority will try to block some of these majority or presidential appointments from going through. And there's a decent backlog of these still that's happening in the Senate, but a little bit more, a little bit less than past predecessors that have held the Oval Office.
Well, the backlog is different in that what is unique about this and unprecedented compared to past administrations is that Democrats have refused to confirm any nominees by voice vote or unanimous consent. Basically fast tracking them, not wasting a bunch of floor time on people that have bipartisan support to be nominated for and confirmed for their positions. So that's the unique thing, that none of them have, like I said, been voice voted or passed by unanimous consent in the Senate for Trump's nominees this term. In his first term, as of this time at the end of July, there were 5 by voice vote or unanimous consent compared to 46 for Joe Biden. And there were a lot more, over, nearly 200 for Obama and a little over 200 for George W. Bush. So this is becoming a growing issue in the Senate. And it's definitely a problem Republicans are trying to overcome, either by getting a deal with Democrats or potentially changing the rules to fast track the nominees on their own.
We'll wrap up on the other side of the Capitol as an effort has moved forth in the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee that you've written about to perhaps overhaul FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, and the agency that is responsible that Americans see a lot in disaster relief. Many Republicans, especially during the Biden era and the Biden administration, brought up efforts to brought up ideas to perhaps eliminate FEMA surrounding some what they believe were targeted efforts to avoid or not provide assistance to Republican families, specifically concerning flooding after storms and hurricanes in the South and in the Carolinas and other places. And there's always been this kind of effort by Republicans to put some of this responsibility on the states and maybe less so on the federal government. And we've seen now an effort in the T&I committee to perhaps overhaul what FEMA looks like going forward.
Right. So as the Trump administration is considering its own proposals for overhauling FEMA, they have a review council undertaking an effort that will report recommendations to Trump by November. And Trump has flirted with the idea of eliminating FEMA, but wants significant changes to restore power to the state. the House is coming out with this bipartisan effort to show that no, we should not eliminate FEMA. There is still a role for it, but yes, it can be reformed. Yes, we can do more to give states more flexibility and more power to handle their own finances. So a couple of the ways this bill would do that would be by allowing states to get advanced money for grants for rebuilding, as opposed to right now, states, if you want to rebuild your infrastructure and get federal money to do that, you have to pay all the costs of the up front as the state and then go back to the federal government afterwards for reimbursement. So that can take years to get that money back from the federal government. So this would seek to switch that around, give them the money up front and give them more flexibility, hopefully to complete the project sooner, because states don't have unlimited budgets, and particularly localities and stuff. So that's one of the big goals here. Another one is to reduce paperwork for if you're an individual homeowner or someone who's been impacted by the disaster. There are different forms you have to fill out based on what your various impacts are. And so they're consolidating that all into one form, making the process easier. There was a big issue in North Carolina where people were sent denial letters without a clear process on, that they could appeal it. It wasn't clear to them. And so they're making that process more clear too, that there is an appeals process, that if people are denied, they can fight it, and trying to clarify things for individuals as well who are impacted, not just the states.
Always something to watch on the Hill, even as August recess has arrived. Lindsay, thank you for the time and the updates.
Yep, thank you.
You can find all of Lindsay's work at WashingtonTimes.com and on social media. I'm George Gerbo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.